It's time to be woke. Take off your shades, it helps see through the smoke. Cause the wicked hide behind the cloak. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog. What's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. It's Friday, and I'm going to call it a hybrid Friendship Friday, just because the two need to be expressed in the same statement. It's snowing here in Canada on May the 28th. It's kind of surreal. It's 34 degrees in Americanese, and 2 days ago it was in the low 90s. So if you're wondering why Canadians always have the sniffles, that's the reason. We have an excellent show for you this morning. We have a friend of the show, an all-around swell person, and she's coming on soon, but we got some stuff to discuss first. And that starts with the introduction of my famous and generally lovely Carrie Barber. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning. I am so not famous. Infamous, maybe, but not famous.
You're famous to me.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, thank you.
Because I know you so well, so you're famous.
Right. Yay, there's that. So, yeah, good morning, everybody. Andy, is it really snowing?
It is.
No.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
It is. My dogs, I always take my two dogs, Hershey and Baby, out for to do their business before the show, so that they don't want to do their business during the show. And we go out the back deck, and the one dog goes off, and the smaller one looks up at me and says, "Dad, really?" They're a little bit of princesses. When the ground's wet, they walk kind of like they're wearing socks,
Yeah, don't get the socks. Well, it's gonna be a lovely 85 degrees here, sunny, beautiful.
It's going to be a lovely 85 degrees Kelvin here.
We're not that far apart. That's what's so amazing about this. I mean, geographically, it's okay. So,
I went out this morning. I said, "Shit, it looks like Texas."
Which is right next door to me. So yeah, could be. Who knows? It's whatever. It's whatever. So yeah, welcome everybody to Friday. If this is your first time tuning in, we are obviously live. And we do want you to participate. So if you type something in the chat, particularly on our Twitter pages or on our Facebook, we'll see it and we'll read it here. Keep it simple. Doesn't necessarily have to be clean. Do whatever you want. But we want you to join the conversation. That's what we're all about.
We're about being respectful to other people, right? You can use foul language. You can use inappropriate metaphors, but you must be respectful to everyone.
Yeah, that's it. And they say that more intelligent, creative people use colorful idioms, which I'm all about it. I love that excuse.
I've been described as a colorful idiom. Oh, wait, it's close to that.
Idiot. Oh boy, this is a Friday show for sure. We're already off the rails. So yeah, grab your coffee, mimosa, no judgment, whatever it is you want, and join this conversation, because I think this is really going to be a good one coming up here in just a minute. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this, because this particular subject I have recently become familiar with on an intimate level, and I'll go into why. But first, got some very sad news last night. There's a friend of mine who was a journalist with Alternate, if you remember Alternate. Her and I got connected because she worked at Alternate back in the day with a number of really great journalists. And it was one of the premier left-leaning organizations. And her and I got connected because of the union issue. When folks at Alternate were talking about organizing a union, and there was some sincere effort towards that, the owner of Alternate, whose name I don't remember at the moment, not really important, decided that rather than dealing with unionization, she would close the entire publication. So it was just one more of these things that we have to deal with in the progressive space, that this is why we can't have nice things. So Pamela never stopped being a good journalist, and she was working on so many different things. And in fact, she would send me articles and challenge me. And she really helped me become a better journalist, because she would send me something that looked sometimes innocuous or, just what's going on there. And she would challenge me. She's like, there's a story here. I know there's a story here. Find it. And so I would do the research, and we would collaborate a little bit. And then even on this program, she would forward subjects that she wanted us to cover that she felt were important. And we just so appreciate her enthusiasm, her support. And she has been with us for well over a year. So Pamela, you will be missed. I am so fortunate personally to have known you. We on this show are so fortunate to have had your support, and deepest sympathies to her family, her friends, and the entire community is really going to feel this one, because she was plugged in so many places, just quietly doing the work, right? She was one of those people who would volunteer and give her time, and didn't want accolades, didn't want clout, didn't even want recognition. She was just quietly pushing things forward, pushing people forward, challenging ideas and concepts, and phenomenal human being. So I'm sorry to say that we have lost one of our family members here. So thank you, Pamela, for everything that you have done. So very sad note, but I'm not going to be sad, because Pamela wouldn't want us to be sad on this either, because that's just kind of who she was. She was just an amazing person, and yeah, I'm going to miss her research and her help, and the chit chats that we would have almost on a daily basis. So. All right. So this show I want to dedicate to her, because this was one of the topics that she was talking about. And I think it's important, particularly when we have all of this information coming out. News stories hit the publications yesterday about the temperature of the Earth is going to rise faster than the Paris Climate Agreement has allowed for. We'll see that. Andy, you've spoken about other economists who have mentioned that we have surpassed those goals every year. So when it comes to climate change and sustainability and, being able to survive, this particular topic comes in just a fundamental level that you need to understand it. And I think for me personally, I've gotten familiar with semiconductors through solar panels, because for those of you who don't know, I moved to New Mexico from Chicago, and off-grid here is not necessarily a choice. You get into situations where just to bring electric power to my property is $12,000. That's unsustainable. But here I can purchase parts and pieces to go off grid and get a federal and a state credit to do so. So that's the way that I have to go. And what I'm looking at is semiconductors and solar panels and all these pieces that go into it. None of it's manufactured in the United States. And then new technologies coming out that is making it more sustainable, more effective. But I couldn't help but notice nobody here is making it. I couldn't buy USA made if I wanted to. And so that was my first clue that maybe something's wrong. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our lovely friend of the show and a badass researcher herself. So Amber, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing really well for a Friday, for a Friendship Friday.
We have to call it Friendship Friday because Amber's here and she's always admonishing us politely in the chat when we call it something else. So good morning, Amber. How are you?
I just want to say real quickly, you were talking about the weather. It's the same here in southeastern Washington. Last week we were in the 50s and 60s. Next week we'll be in triple digits. Just bipolar weather around here. So, but no, I'm doing really good. I'm happy to be here with you guys this morning.
Well, excellent. We appreciate you joining us, and I know it's super early. You and I are both barely awake. Yeah. So got your coffee ready. You're ready to talk. And for everyone who is watching, I posted the link to Amber's article in the chat. So this, I think, it's a really compelling look at how the U.S. is placed in the semiconductor market. So the title of the article is "The Semiconductor Shortage, Our National Security and Modern Money." So what's going on, Amber? Take us through this.
Well, I had heard a couple months ago that there was a semiconductor shortage, and I was like, well, wait a minute. I didn't really know anything about semiconductors. I just knew that they were in everything. They're literally in everything. Nuclear power plants, our military, our medical equipment, everything in your house practically. It's part of our daily lives. And so I got this bug and I started researching, and I learned that, once upon a time in the 90s, we used to produce, close to, upwards 50% of our own semiconductor demand. And through corporate deregulation, it's all gone overseas. We barely make 12% of the global chip supply. And we sell a good portion of that as well. 35% of US sales go to China. And so I started digging and looking into what the different administrations have done over time, the different bills that have been introduced that sit there, nothing ever gets done. President Trump had the opportunity under the Defense Production Act, to pass either a standalone executive order. He was also presented bills by Tom Cotton, the CHIPS Act, and nothing was done. It just gets kicked on down the road. And with all of that vital production overseas, we saw what it did during COVID, how essential items, when the supply chains interrupted, that has a rippling effect, not just for here, but all around the world. And because it's such a intricate, process, building these chips, sometimes 26 weeks to build one, type of chip, the repercussions are immense. General Motors had to shut down plants in March, some of which are still shut down, all because of a chip. And why aren't we doing anything about this? Why does it keep getting left to the powers that be? It's something's got to change.
Well, Amber, isn't this just free market at work, right? We just let it go overseas because I can get more of a profit margin for manufacturing over there. I don't necessarily have to pay a livable wage, and I don't have to deal with unions and all of this sort of thing. So shouldn't I be allowed to manufacture where I want?
There's that argument to be made, the free market, but that doesn't ensure our national security. Literally, these semiconductors go in, our fighter jets, everything that you can think of, from the top to the bottom. And if we just allow the free market to run wild with it, they're the ones that exacerbated the problem in the first place. If we had kept more of our supply over, production here at home, we wouldn't now be having this chips shortage. So, I mean, we can't leave, valuable and important, vital production to the whims of the free market.
It's interesting that you brought up security, national security, because you talked about military components, things like this. I forget the company, but a couple years ago, there was a couple different PC products that were coming over from overseas that had spyware and malware embedded in
Huawei.
Well, thank you, Andy. So all of that can be programmed into small chips. Am I getting that wrong? So what we're doing is that we're outsourcing to suppliers that may not have the best intent when they're bringing products back to the U.S. that are used for manufacturing, like you said, our military equipment and things like that. So now, particularly on the left, we have a whole bunch of people saying, well, we need to cut the military budget, blah, blah, blah. So this is it really a security issue? Where's the happy medium here?
Well, national security isn't just for the military. It's our well-being in our daily lives. Because it's in everything, because we use it. National security, in my mind, doesn't just apply to the military. It's but I think that for instance, with Huawei. China is so beat like an old rug and tariffs and sanctions. And, America has done its darndest to make sure that China is having a hard time catching up in the global chip manufacturing arena. But I think that the important takeaway is to remember that our government can afford to get this manufacturing going, ensuring the production of something so vital. And it's just ridiculous that the can just keeps getting kicked on down the line. And here we are. And, Hawaiians and having to rent U-Hauls because there's no rental cars, things like that. It's ridiculous, and we can do better. And it's going to take such a long time to catch up. It will literally take decades to catch up if we don't start right now, getting the infrastructure in place. We're going to be hurting. And the fact is that China is going to be able to produce 70% of its own demand, which is huge. China's a really big country. So we need to catch up.
Okay, so there was one other piece here that you touched on about Taiwan. Taiwan, in your article, you talked about Taiwan is the largest chip manufacturer, and this is TSMC is the company. So from a geopolitical point of view, when we talk about military security, all of this sort of thing, for those who aren't familiar with what's going on in Taiwan, China maintains that Taiwan, they own it outright. And Taiwan says, no, we are autonomous and we're cousins. We have a relationship with you, but we have our own government. And every once in a while, there's some sort of saber rattling that's going on over there. And it's usually a US vessel, like an aircraft carrier, that gets moved into the area to push back on China a little bit. So for those of you who are anti-warfare, this is kind of an important topic when we're talking about the largest manufacturer. So Amber, if we are not going to do anything, and obviously so far we haven't done anything, we're just an importer, then this becomes a much bigger issue when we talk about, we had Kamala Harris talking about water wars. Nobody's talking about semiconductor wars yet. Is that something that we should be considering here?
It's definitely something to think about when you consider that the materials alone to make these chips come from all over the world. There's no centralized place of production. There's no centralized place to get what you need for your fabs, your fabrication. So it's a huge problem. And foreign policy plays a big part in that. US likes to kind of push people around and strong arm sometimes, with China and Taiwan, U.S. foreign policy has basically forced so many companies to abandon production in China and switch over to Taiwan. Taiwan is absolutely inundated with orders. They absolutely cannot keep up right now. So, that meddling, when we should be focused on, chip production for everyone instead of, trying to punish China. To be fair, they have their issues too, but, instead of being punitive towards other countries, we should be worried about our own infrastructure and worrying about our own supply chains and, having good relations with these countries, because that is a huge problem. Mm-hmm. And one misstep in the process has a huge rippling effect on down the line for hundreds of products.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to quickly add that we're seeing now, especially right now with the Biden administration, that the emphasis has shifted from Russia to China as the global boogeyman, right? That and using the excuse of the Uyghurs, the treatment of the Uyghurs as, the typical human rights violations the Americans will just not stand for. We don't care about our own people, but some reason we care about the Uyghurs, right? And when you look at the whole enchilada back from when Clinton led the United States into a free trade deal with China, and what was going to be, America's market business community to open up China to their markets and all of that stuff, ended up that because of this, it was just a way for large corporations to go to China and build there, right? But the Chinese government wasn't, they were smart about that as well, because if you wanted to open a factory or a processing plant or what have you in China to build products as an American corporation, you had to deal with the Chinese, government, and you had to sign away your rights. So over time, the Chinese government would acquire enough controlling assets of these corporations so that they were getting the vast majority of profit from this, right? So the whole thing is completely convoluted in when Trump was trying to, level the playing field by tariffs against the whole thing. And now we see that the Chinese economy is about to overtake the US economy as the world's largest. And that means that there are, the business community in the US stands to lose money because of that. And as you know, Carrie, and we've talked about this lots of time, that's what makes the decisions in the US is profit.
Yeah, the donor class. So real quick, we have a couple people who joined in this conversation. So thank you for doing that. So Jim Bird says, free market isn't a fair market, and there is an inherent conflict of interest in a free market. So Jim, while I agree with you, let's all recognize free market is created by regulations. Think of it as a boxing ring, and the government sets the ground rules for that free market. When that isn't happening, or those rules are really loose, then that ring becomes kind of obsolete. And I think that's what we're talking about. So free market doesn't mean without regulations, and that is supposed to be the role of government. So Rocco Million has joined us. Thank you, Rocco. It's our first time here, or first time weighing in. I'm not sure if you've seen us before, but thank you. And Rocco says, hey, everyone, and hi, Amber. Great work. So thank you. Right. So
thank you.
So I wanted to kind of jump in on, Andy, where you were talking about Biden. So Biden is now doing kind of this Green New Deal light. And the way that neoliberals like to do their incentives is tax credits or rebates. So first, you've got to have the cash on hand to participate in this program. And what I'm talking about specifically is he's done a rebate and tax credit program for electric vehicles. So electric vehicles, if you're not aware, use multiple semiconductor components in everything. And then the recharging stations and all of this use them too. So this is kind of a big deal. And so Tesla stock went up, and a bunch of other GM and things like that, they went up. But Amber, let's get to the money component, right? Because on the surface, when you don't really dive into this, sounds like a big deal, but again, it's a rebate after you've made the purchase, and then you get a tax credit. So it's all on the back end. Can't eat a rebate and you can't eat a tax credit. But if you have the money to purchase, I don't know what a Tesla is going for now. Is it 60,000, 50,000? I don't know.
I don't know. A lot of Bitcoin.
Yeah, and unbelievably large amount of Dogecoin.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, because Doge fell recently. If you haven't been paying attention on Elon's, he snubbed his nose at it. He called it, I forget the exact words, but he called it like a fake, a scam or whatever, and it took a nosedive. So Amber, let's get into the MMT of all of this. Tax rebates, incentives for electric vehicles, semiconductors. Where should the regulation be for the government? Where should Biden be looking? If you were sitting next to Biden, and obviously we want to survive, so we need to start changing over how we look at fuel and sustainability, where would you put the money?
Well, hands down, as far as semiconductors are concerned, we have to have fabrication plants. So there's chip manufacturers, but there's also fabless chip manufacturers. So people like Intel has different building. They just work on the programming, the stuff that goes inside the chip. They're not necessarily making the chips. So we have many fabless companies. So that would be the first thing, is infrastructure, because it's going to take so long to catch up. We have to start right away. And there's no reason why he can't use the Defense Production Act, executive order, standalone bill, lickety
Wait. That sounds like you're advocating for a nationalization of an entity. That's communism.
No, but it's interesting.
Okay, so let's explore this. What do you mean exactly? Break it down for me with very little caffeine this morning.
Well, it's there's an argument to be made that key vital infrastructure should be somewhat socialized. In this case, because we have such an established presence with companies like Intel, I would say it would be more of a partnership. We wouldn't be completely taking over that industry. That just would not work. But we definitely can be putting the money necessary, towards the infrastructure that we need, cooperating with Intel and the companies, that we work with. There's many global companies that have chip manufacturing inside the US, and vice versa. The US has many chip manufacturing plants overseas. But that would be the way to go. And, a key element is the skill level of our labor force. The US isn't even in the top 10 for skilled labor force, which is required for this kind of work. So that's where the job guarantee comes in, and job programs and working with these companies to get the necessary workforce to even, operate these plants. So it's an all-encompassing problem. It affects many different, aspects of society. So we got to get started right away. That's what I would tell Biden. Let's get started. Let's get this executive order going. Okay, it's time. It's
fair enough. And I just want to make this point. Amber said U.S. companies that manufacture overseas. That's a tax shelter scheme that really has very little to do with anything. But okay, Rocco is popping off on the chat, so I want to get to some of his comments real quick. He said offshore jobs can be a great thing if the federal government response is right. With a federally guaranteed living wage jobs program, federal jobs guarantee, and people don't need starvation wage factory jobs making widgets while America literally crumbles. So great point there. And then he brought up a really good point. with the tax credits, where we were talking about that, he said it's the same with solar panels with your house. You can get a federal tax credit, but it's non-refundable. So a disabled vet like Rocco with no federal debt burden gets zero for going green. That's true. I hadn't thought about that. If you don't have a high tax liability to offset that credit, then you're not getting really any cash back. So then he also says, we need bottom-up planning. Nobody wants all businesses to be nationalized like a communist system. That's what people think, and good point. And he says, our government can hire and train unemployed to kill in our own military and make it the strongest military in the world. Then it can also hire and train unemployed to heal. And I think that is a phenomenal point, because we have this massive human capital in Army Reserve, Army Corps of Engineers, all of these folks who are highly trained, educated, already work really well together. Why can't we retool some of them for some of the hard labor of infrastructure rebuilding, and this part included, right? So Army Corps of Engineers, we saw this during COVID. They can put together a medical facility in less than a week. They could do the same thing with manufacturing, and then federal jobs guarantee come in to help train displaced workers with livable wages. Is that just crazy talk? Have I gone too far?
No, we probably aren't going far enough.
Okay.
And I think that as far as the widgets being made overseas, in this particular instance, it's a much more nuanced issue, and you have to have a highly skilled workforce, and that's part of the reason why companies are able to do that, because they have the high skilled workers for cheaper. But it's more complicated than just widgets. But I think that it should be from the ground up, job program for kids as soon as they get out of high school, or training them to do this work. People who are transitioning, they want to get into a different, field of work, transition them with the job program, the training. But I think that it's a problem that if we don't start tackling it right away, it's going to get away from us. China, their economy will be double no later than 2050. So it's just right around the corner. We need to catch up. It's time. It's time to stop kicking the can down the road.
One thing I would like to just add there briefly, Care, if you don't mind. The other aspect of this is that although there are manufacturers of semiconductors in the United States, as well as China and Taiwan and what we've already talked about, if you decide that you're going to, create a facility that's publicly owned, that is funded by the government, there's a difference, and that is that right now, the United States is, in terms of their technological know-how, is lagging behind the Chinese and the Taiwanese. They can't make the same products that they do, right? So the whole infrastructure of the technology and the advancement of it, the US is lagging behind in that. So it's not like they can put a facility together and make what the Taiwanese are making, because they just don't know how. And I don't blame China and Taiwan for not wanting to share that with the United States.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to push back on this whole idea, because what we're essentially saying is American workers are stupid. And I don't believe that for a second, because when you have a workforce, there's no more productive workforce in the world than the US. So when you look at the charts about productivity and wages, you see this huge disparity, but the US worker, we work our asses off. And then Andy, I'm calling back to the show that we did on the hidden subsidies for oil and gas, right? We have been propping up these dying industries for almost 2 decades with billions of dollars, hiding the fact that these are dying industries. Could we not transition that? And so we're looking at a workforce. Not only are we building up STEM, but when you're talking about the day-to-day product manufacture. I've known people. I have a friend in Pennsylvania who worked on wafers and semiconductors. It's you can train somebody in one minute thing. It's the clean room process. It's the non-static process. If you can train a worker to do work for Amazon in a warehouse and the minutia that has to go into it and the time crunch, making semiconductors here should not be an issue for the average American worker. And I'm talking about the coal miner transitioning to it. That person's got to look out for safety, health, and all of these things, plus the technology and equipment that they use. Are we really saying that a coal miner or an oil worker or even someone in an Amazon warehouse couldn't be trained here? Really?
No, we're not. I'm not saying that at all. My point is that the change from one industry to another, from the energy sector to the high tech sector, it's not the fault of the workers. It's the fault of the unfettered capitalist society that doesn't find profit in doing those changes, right? That we're going to maximize profits. We're not going to incur huge costs of having to train workers or, set up facilities and do our own work when we can get them done much more profitably in a place like China.
I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. That makes more sense, because then you can have one manufacturing company supplying to various sources and you reusing that labor. Same thing that we did with the textile industry. We moved it out of the southeastern portion of the United States in particular and moved it to India and Taiwan and all of those things. Okay, so that's fair. It's from a profit standpoint. So
sure, Americans are definitely capable. It's not the capability. It's that, what is it, 18% of that Americans graduate college, something like that, the average, with student loans. There's a lot of roadblocks keeping people from attaining the the skills that they need as far as school. But I think that you're absolutely right, because the fabrication process is so huge, a person could be trained for one small niche. You're going to do this little part of it here, and then on down the line. But it's not because Americans aren't capable. It's just we have so many roadblocks. And if, like you said, if the labor force is cheaper overseas, that's what corporations are going to do, with our deregulation.
Right. And shout out to Ralph Nader. You were right. You called it 20 years ago. And it's happened, and here we are. And yet, boy, electoral politics still villainizes Ralph Nader for speaking truth.
Yeah, and we're going to blame people trying to get across the border and steal your jobs.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, they're stealing your semiconductor jobs, sure.
No, we're shipping the jobs to them. So Rocco's got another comment, and he says, our government is suppressing our productive capacity with unemployment. And that's that NAVRU thing that we keep hearing about. We're going to have to do an explainer on NAVRU. And he says, if our government has unemployed labor and resources, then it can increase spending to hire and train them to increase production and supply. Rocco, why the hell have you not been on our show? You got a lot to say, and I think you need to come on and explain this stuff. So there's your open invitation. Get with me afterwards and let's do it. And he also says, our people have been systematically uneducated. That's true. That's absolutely true, because now we teach to test. We got rid of music and PE and art and those things that really are necessary to train the brain in extrapolating math and science. So yeah, Rocco, I totally agree with you. And Rocco says, yes, he'll come on. So good, we got Rocco coming. So yeah, so Amber, what are we missing in this conversation that we haven't already covered? Because your article does a beautiful job of going through each step. And I love that you included sources from the left and the right in this. This is not necessarily a partisanship issue. right?
No, it definitely not, because it affects, everyone. It's definitely not a partisan issue. I think I would just like to gently remind people that, China, like Russia, gets beat like an old rug. So I just want you to, whenever, you hear, China, 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 just take it with a grain of salt. Like Max Blumenthal did that excellent coverage of the human rights abuses, and how it's the writer of that report is extremely problematic, and we need to be paying attention to those things as well. Because our government loves to manufacture consent, and this is one of the ways it does that. I think the big takeaway is, that we can do something about this, where, the government's hands aren't tied. They just pretend that they are. It's only a lack of political will that this problem has not been worked on. I think that people should remember, that anybody can write an article like this. When you learn modern money and you're looking through the world through this lens, knowing that, the government isn't broke, we're not in debt to China, you're able to look at these problems and like you said, extrapolate. And so I just want to encourage people, write your own article, learn modern money, so that you too can apply that lens to these problems, so that we can find solutions. Because it's not just about identifying the problem, it's knowing how to solve the problem. So I just want to thank you guys so much for having me on. And I wanted to let you know that Rocco's actually my mentor, so he would be great for you to come on. I love Rocco. Love you, buddy.
Yeah, let's do that. So there was a perfect segue to this weekly MMT thing that you mentioned. So Andy, I think we have a graphic for it. Amber, you want to speak to what this is, this MMT weekly update thing?
Sure. So our group Beyond the Spectrum that we have with Jimmy Sunderland, Sam Hollenbeck, and Sherry Wise, the economist, they all help me get this thing going every week. We like to review lay people and academics alike. It's kind of like a welcome wagon, new faces that pop into the MMT community. We want to encourage them to come in. So if they present a really great MM tweet, then they get put in the lineup. So we've been doing that for over a year. We're on our 71st episode. Jimmy does great graphics, animations. I do the standalone stationary graphics, and it's great. Just trying to keep MMT in the forefront of people's minds. It's quick, 2 minutes every Monday morning. Keep you up to date with the new faces, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. We really enjoy doing it.
Wonderful. So yeah, I did include a link to it, and we will make sure to keep an eye on it. Okay, so Dave, good morning. Dave popped up, and I actually love what he wrote, because it's very simple, but I think thought-provoking. He says, do we have jobs to have lives, or live to have jobs? And whatever happened to livelihoods? Yeah, I love that. The whole pride of ownership and working in a career, and it all went away with retirement and the gold watch and the pension thing. So I think all of this goes back to what MMT is about, right? Understanding how money actually works in a federal system. So you guys have been advocates, like you said, all of these episodes and pushing this out. Do you feel like people are starting to learn about it, or where are we at now? Because I remember talking to Warren Mosler, where he was challenged every day to teach at least one person who learned about it today. And that was so long ago. Where are we now with it?
I would say that it's definitely more mainstream. You can tell by the pushback articles, everybody has their hot takes on it. So I have personally seen it come much more to the forefront. Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski. I've heard several, independent media, personalities talking about this, not necessarily saying MMT, but they're talking MMT. They're talking about how deficits aren't really a thing. And it just seems like that's becoming more and more a thing. People just aren't, uptight about the boogeyman that is the deficit. So I'm hopeful. I feel like it's catching on. There's still a lot of work left to do, for sure. It's going to be an ongoing process. Neoliberal brainwashing, it's strong in this country. So it takes a lot of work to break through that. But I've been passionate about it for several years. I learned about it from Rocco, and we're just going to keep going, doing what we can do in our own little ways every day, to get the message out there, and hopefully in a fun way, in a kind way, no browbeating.
Right. And Rocco just put in this hashtag to kind of echo what you were saying. He said nonpartisan for progress. I love that. And Dave Parker said he read your article. He saw it last night on Twitter. So he said it was
wonderful.
He enjoyed it. So thank you, Dave, for that. So and then Rocco says the same thing. I see it growing, but MMT destroys the mainstream narratives that are based on fantasy and designed to keep us divided. But it's a hard thing to understand, and everything you believe in is not only wrong, but unnecessary and sadistic. And this is where I want to make a plug for our show and other independent media, because this is why we exist, right? We are not corporate sponsored. We don't have an ulterior motive. Andy and I don't get paid. So support your independent media, because this is why we exist, to push and to apply gentle pressure to our brothers and sisters in corporate journalism to really tell the truth. And while we're out here speaking truth to power, we are that influence. So if you can support us on our Patreon with $1, great. If we're not the journalists that you really want to support, if we haven't moved you to make that effort, please find one that you do. And there's so many good ones out there. All of it matters. And so likewise with the work that you guys are doing over there and beyond the spectrum, love all the work that you do. And now I'm going to hold Rocco to joining us early in the morning. So this is great. So before
Awesome.
we get out of here, Andy, do you have any final thoughts for Amber? Or Amber, is there one burning thing that you want the audience to know this morning?
Know that you are good, you are worthy, that the things that you do matter, that we're all in this together. And I hope that you have a wonderful Friendship Friday. And I'm always here if anybody needs to talk.
That's
and I would just like to say that I'm looking forward to checking out the MM Tweets weekly review because of the MMT aspect, and I've always wanted to go camping with aliens.
Man, I'm telling you, let's do it.
You need to come into Mexico then, because boy, do we got it. Okay, so Dave Parker put in a request, and we do take audience requests. So Dave says, Bill Mitchell's MMT 101 by EDX is awesome. Highly recommend it as an next offering. Bill Mitchell's in, is he in
Australia?
Melbourne? Yeah, is it
No,
Melbourne?
no, he's in I think it's Sydney, but I don't quote me on that. It's Newcastle. That's where
Newcastle. Okay, so he's
Yes.
retired. Let's see if we can get
Well,
him for 3 a.m.
he is and he isn't, because Bill is still and it's perfect segue to a plug that just so you know that our macaroni and cheese this week is with Bill Mitchell, and he is critiquing the UBI and why it is a neoliberal pipe dream. So that's coming up on Saturday morning. So stay tuned for that, because it's going to be a real good one. Bill's such a knowledgeable guy, and I love his little one zingers that he gives in the podcast. He's got such an amazing dry sense of humor, and he would be great for the Friendship Friday.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. Yeah, and it just occurred to me that our entire thing, sometimes it works out this way. This is Kismet. This entire theme this week has been about MMT and money and finance. And wow, we rounded this out beautifully. So Amber, fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, excellent. So before we get out of here this morning, I just want to let everybody know, thank you to everybody who's tuning in this morning. I hope that you will join us next week on Monday because it's Memorial Day and this is long overdue. We have a very special guest coming who had some personal trauma, personal tragedy. And I think after the last year in particular, there isn't anyone on the planet who didn't experience it in some way, shape, or form. And no one's experience is more valid or more poignant than another. It's all how we relate to it and relate to each other. So we have a very special episode. And in my mind, I would like to frame it in kind of something that I know very well is the Irish wake, right? So an Irish wake is for the living, to celebrate life, to celebrate remembrance, and build a sense of community. You can't have a wake with just 2 or 3 people. You've got to have everybody, friends, associates, community, all of it. So on Monday, what I would like to do is welcome a very, very special guest. And I will post an article that he wrote that I just thought was so compelling. But I would also invite you to think about what you lost, the people that you have lost, relationships that aren't maybe the same, need some healing, and what you do, what you can suggest for others, whether it's self-care, religion, no religion, community activism, volunteerism, whatever it is that has worked for you. Let's share all of that and have kind of a community family meeting about healing, in particular on this Memorial Day when we're remembering people that we have lost through service and in other areas. So I hope that you will join us and we'll make it a positive thing. And I'm going to lean heavily on Andy for this one because he has such a knack for kind of extending that wisdom and sharing the love. So
Well, and I just wanted to quickly add that that's not a American centric feeling. 2020 and now in this year 2020 extended, that that there was so much different that we had to deal with, and it can be demoralizing, and it can really hit you, smack you back, right? Did we see a lot of change in the way we do business, in the way we take care of people? There's an argument to say that no, we didn't. We should have, and we didn't, right? Especially in the US, where if a pandemic isn't capable of at least bringing at least a public option into play, let alone Medicare for all, then what is, right? But as we start to get a handle on what we've been through and come out of that on the other side, if that's possible, then you need to use this. And the fact that we're all here now, we made it. We have to renew our cheers and our vows for activism and to make changes, for the just society that we all want to see. We can't let this strike us down. We have to use this as motivation to try to work harder, because we're running out of time. We don't have much time left. If we don't make those changes starting now, then they're not going to change. And there's no future for us. And that's scary, but that's the truth. And on that note, it is Friday, so there is some good news. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. And be ready for more honest talk on Monday. And we will see you bright and early Monday morning. Take care.
We bout that, ayy. We in the zone. We out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keep it in G.